This video will explain the 3 stages of the Understanding by Design, or UBD, template. In stage number 1, we identify the desired results. The first thing you will see in stage 1 is the course introduction, giving basic information about what the course is, what the grade level is being addressed, the type of school or organization, textbooks, links, and so forth. Continuing on with your unit overview, you will, in very simple, brief words, explain the unit and what it is about. Next, you'll identify the content standards or competencies that go with this particular unit that will be taught. Identifying on the left the code, which is your competency standards, the organization, and the particular standard that is being addressed. Now, next comes the interesting part. There's 4 sections where you're going to identify knowledges and skills that your students should understand and learn from this training. And the first thing we talk about is transfer. What does the student need to be able to do in the future that is different, maybe without the support of the instructor? What do we want them to transfer to their own lives, career, or so forth? And then on the right-hand side, you'll identify the standards or the competency codes that we had identified earlier. Now, as you move down farther, you're going to talk about essential questions. For essential questions, we want to find out what thought-provoking questions will foster inquiry, meaning-making, and transfer. These should not be true-false questions. These should not be questions that have a right-wrong answer or something that you could look up in a book and just spit out the answer. These should be questions that stir a lot of debate and discussion among the students. Next comes understandings. What specifically do you want students to understand? What inferences should they be able to make? What do you want them to absorb into their knowledge? Further down, we're going to talk about knowledges. What facts and basic concepts should students know and be able to recall? So here I'm talking about factual information they should know from studying this unit. And then the last thing we do is talk about skills. What basic processes should students be able to do at the end of this training? So the heart of stage number 1 is identifying the questions that are going to be addressed, the understandings you want the students to come up with, the knowledge and skills that they should acquire from this training. In stage number 2, we're going to talk about what is acceptable evidence that proves that the students have mastered this content. In stage 2, the first thing we're going to talk about will be performance tasks. A performance task is an assessment where students should be able to show what they know. They should be able to do or create something that shows they have acquired the content, they have acquired the knowledge, skills, and understandings that you wanted them to get out of this particular unit. List your performance task right here. And then next to it, on the right-hand side of it, you will identify the criteria that you feel is important, the criteria that is necessary for them to complete in order to successfully master this learning. Next, we come down to the other evidence. Here we want to have assessments that show that students have the knowledge and the skills that align with our standards and our goals for this course. We need to prove that we have met the learning that we wanted to take place. In the next section of stage 2, we have a grading rubric. This particular rubric is assessing an identified performance. The criterion is listed in the far left column. And then as we move across the grading rubric, we have to identify what would make this criteria be exemplary. What criteria makes it sufficient? What criteria would identify that something needs revised? or if there's absolutely no evidence of this criteria being met. So in stage 2, we are determining the acceptable evidence, the performance tasks that students will demonstrate that they have the understanding that we wanted them to acquire, as well as the other evidence such as quizzes and so forth. The students can show they have the basic factual knowledge and skills, and then any grading rubrics on how we're going to grade, especially those performance assessments. Now in stage 3, we're going to plan the learning experiences that students will have that will help them meet their assessments for the learning objectives of this course. In the Understanding by Design template, they use an acronym called WHERE TO in order to create the learning plan. Each letter of the acronym WHERE TO helps the instructional designer move through the learning plan to make sure they're hitting all the different areas that they need. The first letter, W, in the acronym WHERE TO means we need to identify where the students are going and why. So we need to be listing that information in this first section. And then the H stands for a hook. How are we going to get their attention at the onset of this unit and hold their attention throughout? We continue on to the E, where we will equip students with experiences so that they can explore this information, explore this new learning to understand it. The R will help them rethink and revise. The E then is for evaluate, allow students to get formative feedback to improve their work. I love the T of WHERE TO. T is for tailor, and that means that's where we're going to get into individualizing, differentiating, and tailoring that unit for the individual. O is for organized with technology. What are we going to do? How are we going to use technology to promote the creativity and higher order thinking skills that we want the students to work with? So the reason Understanding by Design is called a backwards design is because we start by identifying what we want to end up with. We just start with our desired results. We continue on then to say, how are we going to determine whether those results are accomplished? And then in the final stage, we actually plan the learning experiences, the activities the students will undertake to show that they know the information that achieves those desired results.